everyone, welcome to Pharicode on Air. Today's webinar is Onboarding Excellence, How to Increase Efficiency with Physical Outbound Attachments. I'm Janet, I'm the VP of Marketing here at Pharicode, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. And I'm very excited to introduce you to our presenter, Michael Rauch. Michael is a Service Delivery Manager at Pharicode, as well as a Senior Developer and Trainer. He has more than 5 years experience in ServiceNow and 10 years experience in IT. So he was originally a customer of ServiceNow before working as a partner with Pharicode, and has been involved in more than 20 implementations throughout his career. So very excited to hear his insights and expertise on today's webinar. Just before we get started though, we'd like to give some background information on Pharicode. So Pharicode is a certified small business association, women-owned business, and provides cutting-edge technology services, managed services, staff augmentation to a variety of industries, specifically federal, state, and local government. We're very proud to have over 270 certifications, partnerships, specifically with ServiceNow, which we'll be talking about today, as well as Microsoft. And we'll be monitoring the Q&A today, so definitely let us know if you have any questions that arise. You can just drop those into the Q&A and we will answer them. And as another perk of attending today, we'll be giving away a $50 Visa gift card. So we're going to be announcing the winner at the end of today's session. So do stay on till the end after Michael's presentation, probably lasting about 30 minutes until we get to the Q&A. So definitely please stay on, and would love to hear your questions and answers. So definitely pop those in and we'll get to those after the presentation and demo. So now I would love to hand things over to our presenter, Michael Rauch, and we're going to dive in.
Thanks, Jana. I appreciate it. So today we're going to talk about HR and onboarding, and specifically we're going to talk about attachments. Well, just to start things off, I just want to kind of go over kind of how this started. So with the use case that we had when looking up and doing research for the solution that we might go about this, I saw a lot of questions in the community, some things that weren't necessarily answered or weren't ideal solutions. So once this is done, I wanted to wait until this is over so I can go ahead and post that into the community as well, just to give back. So I just wanted to start off with a reminder. If you solve a problem that you can't or you don't find a solution in the community, if you could just give back, just so you can give back to the community and all those other ServiceNow experts out there trying to help everyone out and give back as well. So the table of contents here, what we're going to start out with is talk about the use case. We're going to talk about how can we send email attachments from ServiceNow through email, and why can we not use any of the out-of-the-box options that are presented to us, and how can we overcome these roadblocks, and a quick demo, and then Q&A. So first off, the use case, this was from a large government organization that wanted to improve their HR and onboarding process. And in this particular process, it would take users maybe anywhere from a few months to almost a whole calendar year before they actually got onboarded to their first day. They would go through a whole bunch of different screening processes. So from the time the onboarding process would start, they might not actually get access to ServiceNow. So they wanted to keep the communication going. They wanted to be able to give them documents and things like that without them actually having access to ServiceNow. So this is a really interesting use case that we ended up solving for them. So again, these users will not have access to ServiceNow, so they won't be able to click on any links to go to ServiceNow to download these attachments. They wanted these to be actual physical attachments on the email, so it would look like any other email that they might receive, and they could easily find these attachments by searching through their email client and finding the files that they sent to them that actually had attachments on them. And another big important piece that is always a big concern whenever we're talking about HR is we want to keep the integrity of the scoped application. We don't want to break or drill holes into any of the protections that are in place for the HR application. So here, I'm just going to do a quick overview of these three options that we have. So we have the first option, which is the out-of-the-box option that you've probably seen before and might have used. On the email notification field on the form, you can actually see include attachments. And this is a checkbox. What this is going to do is it's going to actually put any attachments that are on the physical record that triggered this notification, and it's going to put them in the email. Yes, it will be physical email attachments. They don't need to log into ServiceNow to access these attachments, but this is only for the record that triggers the notification. And today we're using lifecycle events. And with lifecycle events, we have notification activities, and what's actually triggering the notification is the parent case, which I'll get into a little bit more later. The next option, option 2, is a mail script. So a lot of you, I'm probably going to bet almost all of you have used this. A lot of the times when we're talking about email attachments from ServiceNow, it's almost always going to be the mail script. That's the one that I like to use a lot. And with this, it's similar, but you have to have access to ServiceNow, and I'll kind of demo you that as well once we get further on. And the last option, which is the option that we used in this case, is injecting the attachment into the email before it processes. So ServiceNow creates the email, and it goes through processing before it sends it. And during that processing process, we're actually going to be injecting the attachment into that before it gets sent. And why we cannot use option 1 in this case, like I already touched on it a little bit, but this is going to be the record that is going to be triggering this notification is actually the parent case. So with lifecycle events, we have a parent case, which is the entire onboarding case, and you're going to have other child cases under it, or child case activities. And in those, you might have users that want to use that parent case to hold other attachments. Maybe they want to hold the documents that the user sends to them on the parent case. Maybe they want to store information that comes back from the screenings on the parent case. And if they did add attachments to that parent case, then it'll also send all of the attachments that are associated with that parent case. So not only the ones that they're wanting to send, but also some that they might not want to send. That's why sometimes the include attachments checkbox isn't the greatest option. And another thing to think about is, what if someone deletes that record off that table? Because so many people have access to that record, to that parent case, that they might actually delete those attachments, and then whoever you're onboarding might never receive those attachments. So you'd have someone from your organization expecting to receive documents, or expecting to receive some information, or maybe even see someone on a specific date that never received that attachment. So that first impression that you're trying to build with your new employee isn't going to be a very great one. And also you're going to be confused as well, because the person you're trying to onboard doesn't have all the information that you might think that they have. The next one, the mail script. The biggest red flag with this one is they don't have access to ServiceNow, so they can't log in to be able to download these attachments. And in this case, we're actually taking data from another table that's not associated with the triggering table, the triggering record. So there's probably going to be some additional scripting that you're going to have to do in order to get the attachments that you want to be put in there. The scripting is not going to be difficult, but that is going to take a little bit more effort, maybe a little bit more testing to get through as well. And why we chose option 3, of course, it's going to be sending physical attachments, which is what they wanted. It's not going to be causing any issues with the HR global HR scope and the global scope conflicts, where we're going to be drilling holes into the HR scope or anything like that. It's going to be keeping the integrity and everything that we want with that. When actually doing research and actually testing this, there were ways that I could have got this done a little simpler ways with making connections between HR and global, but that's definitely not what we want to do. We never really want to do that. You want to avoid that as much as possible when you're working with HR or any kind of personal private information. Here, we can actually leverage this for other areas of the application as well. So this is scalable. So if you do have other areas in your application that you might want to use this, you can use it in those areas. I built the tables kind of in reference to the event table. So you're going to see PARM 1, PARM 2, where you can store really whatever you want. But what I would think you would store is the SysID of the record and maybe the table name that you're using. And I'll kind of go into more detail once we get on that table. And also, you don't need access to ServiceNow in order to go through and download these attachments. And there are 2 areas to the solution, which I briefly touched on, and we'll go into some more detail when we go through the demo. Is we have the global table, and this is going to be a table on the global scope, and this is going to hold the SysID of the record that's calling the event, so the record that is calling the event to create the email, and it's also going to hold the attachment. Next piece is the business rule, and that's going to be on the sys email table, and what that's going to do is it's going to run asynchronously. on insert. So it's while the record is being created and before it's finally processed, we're actually going to be putting those attachments into that record. So it'll actually send that email. All right, and in this portion, I do have slides to graphically go over these next areas, but I think I'd rather go ahead and show you it in an instance. So here we're on our dev instance, and I'm going to just go ahead and show you lifecycle events. So with lifecycle events, we're just going to go into managing activity sets. So the hierarchy of lifecycle events is we have activity sets. So we have, in this case, we have pre-hire, pre-boarding, day 1, week 1, and day 30. And you can see when these are going to be triggered and when these are going to be created. So pre-hire is going to happen immediately. So as soon as they create their onboarding request, they're actually going to be immediately applying these actions. And within this activity set, you can set orders of different activities to happen. But with these activity sets, the hierarchy is immediately, it's going to start that pre-hiring activity set. Then once this pre-hiring is complete, this is waiting on other activity sets, which is the pre-hire. Then the pre-boarding starts. And then in the pre-boarding process, they're probably going to populate the hire date. And that's day 1. Day 1 is going to fire when the hiring date is today. And then that stuff starts. And then week 1 and day 30, maybe for some reviews and things like that. But you can kind of see where this use case really shines is because in this first section, they're not even boarded yet. They're not even hired yet. In the second section, they're not hired yet still. They still might not have access to the system. So we're going to go ahead and just drill down into pre-hire just so we can see the different activities that we have here. And this is on the lifecycle events scope. We're only going to be here temporarily, so I'll just go ahead and click here so we can get a better view of it. And again, at any point in time, if anybody needs me to zoom in, I can zoom in. I'm already at 150%, so I hope everybody can see this pretty well, but if not, let me know at any point throughout the presentation. So here we can see we have our welcome notification, which is the one I created, and this is the one we're going to be physically injecting the attachment to. And here we can see we have new hiring documentation, account notification, drug screening, and background checks. So you could see that maybe an organization doesn't want to give ServiceNow access to somebody until they pass these screenings. Because there are going to be a couple of different screenings that happen before the person's actually full-time hired on. So you might not want to give them ServiceNow access before any of these screenings. So that might be a use case for your organizations as well. But in this case, we're going to go ahead and in this welcome notification, we're going to be sending that notification out. Open this up. And now we're in the notification activity. And in this notification activity, we can see we're a part of the pre-hire activity set. We can see the email template, and I will bring this up just so we can see what this email is going to look like. We can see here that this is on the ServiceNow HR Lifecycle Event Case table. We can see the subject, and we can see the message. So there's no scripting in the message, no mail scripts or anything like that. So we don't have anything that relates these attachments to this template or to this activity. And again, you can see in these that some of these you can put in actual external email addresses. So these users that you're sending emails to or that you're sending these onboarding documents to might not have access to the system. And you can also go through the case and actually go into the HR profile. Go ahead and show that here. Go through the HR profile, and you can actually go to their personal email address. So already out of the box, you can already send emails to someone that doesn't have ServiceNow access from the information that you've acquired from the onboarding process. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy the SysID here, just so I can kind of make things full circle towards the end of the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and store that in this notepad. So this is going to be the SysID for the welcome notification activity. And we're going to see this come into play once we get into the actual outbound notifications table that I created. All right. So now that we've kind of went through an overview of what the hierarchy of lifecycle events are, get a better idea of how some of these onboarding processes look through the lens of lifecycle events, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the notifications here. Just to get another look, this is where you typically send notifications and where you would typically include attachments. So here you can see we have the tables, and just using incident as a reference, because maybe there's some people in here that might have a better understanding of incident, that maybe they haven't implemented HR or onboarding yet, and they're just looking at different options that they might take when doing their implementation. So here we can see when this record's going to send, who will receive these records, and again, you can put in external email addresses here as well if you'd like, but those are going to be hard-coded, or you can go through the actual records on the form to actually walk through the user profile to get their personal email address if you have that information stored as well. Here is that include attachments checkbox. Even in the pop-up information, we can see that it's going to send all attachments from the triggered record as email, as the email attachments. So in this instance with incident, I don't think you'd want to really send all of the email attachments on your incident to a user in almost any use case, because you might be sending them information that they don't want to see or that you don't want them to see, and you might also not have that information on the instance because maybe someone deleted it or maybe it just didn't get attached to that record. The next option that we talked about is the mail script. So we see that down here, and that's just going to be in the body of the HTML, and we can actually go through just to look, and we can kind of compare what this is going to look like with the script that we actually used in the business rule. Just for anybody that hasn't seen this before, for a quick rundown of what this script is going to do, is it is querying the sysattachments table, and it's taking the current sys-ID, which the current sys-ID is the record that's triggering the notification. And it is going through and it's finding all of the records that actually all the records on the sysattachments table that are related to the current record that's calling the notification. And what it's doing here is it's actually building an HTML, so it's building a hyperlink to put on that notification. And we'll show you what those look like towards the end when I show you what the actual end result is for all of this. All right, and the next thing we're going to look at is the outbound email table. So this is the first piece of this solution that we're going to go ahead and show you here. So you can have a ton of different outbound email attachments here. I think in our use case, we might have had about 10 or more. So in this table, you can see it has the name. This name is just going to be a describing factor that you can differentiate between all of the other outbound email attachments on this table. You can add another field for maybe a long description if you want something more robust and more detailed. But these two parameters here, you can think of these just like the parameters on the event table. Those parameters on the event table are just strings. You can use these for however you see fit for any use cases that you currently have. And it's with these parameters being so generic and so bland that you can use them for almost any use case in the future as well. Maybe you might want to add another field for the use case that you might have, but extremely scalable, super easy to understand, especially if you already understand the events table and how all those events work. And again, just so we can look, I copied that sys-ID over, and we can see here that the sys-IDs match. So this param1 is going to hold the sys-ID of the lifecycle events notification activity. So this is going to hold that record so that we know what is actually calling that event and what's triggering that event, so that we can use that later when we're actually injecting the attachment into the notification. Some use cases that might pop up might be using this for multiple tables. So that's why I put this param2 in here, just so if you're using multiple tables, you can't put the table in the script. So you would want to house it in parm2 so that you can easily just go in. You can use parm2 to query the table, use parm1 to query the specific record. And again, as you already know, it's going to have the attachment up here, and the attachment's not actually physically housed on this record. It's actually housed on the sysattachments table, and you saw the sys attachments table being queried in the mail script. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the business rule and kind of talk about the meat of this process and what it's doing, and kind of talk through why I did it this way. I had maybe 3 or 4 iterations that all worked, all used completely different ways to copy attachments from the sys attachments table to the sys email table. I just, through doing testing, I think I like this one better. I think it's more efficient. I think it attaches the attachment quicker and it gets through everything faster, which is what we want. ServiceNow is going to use and send a ton of emails, an absolute ton of emails every day, especially if you're in an extremely large organization. You're going to be just sending out emails all the time. So you want to make sure that you're not taking up any resources, making it any slower to push out any emails, just like with any other time you're doing scripts. You want to make sure you optimize, optimize, optimize. Here, it's going to be on the sys emails table. So this is where the emails are created, this is where they're sent, and this is where they're stored after they're sent for record keeping purposes. When are we going to send it? We're going to send it asynchronously because we want to inject this notification or this attachment into the notification before it is sent out. We also want to do it on insert because we don't want to do it when it updates or deletes. We want to do it as soon as the record is inserted. We want to try to get that attachment in there as quick as possible. And then here, I'll go ahead and full screen this so we can see this better. Kind of break my formatting here so that we can see it in chunks. It's easier to wrap our head around. All right. So with this, you're going to see current in here a lot. Current is going to be the current email that's being created. So this is the email that's currently in processing. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for the sys email log. Before doing this, I've never messed with the sys email log before. I've never had to get information from it. And I was absolutely surprised at how much information is actually in there, and that I could run this whole thing off of the information that I'm given from the sys email log. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to get the sys email log, and what we're looking for is we're going to look for the sys email log that has the current sys ID. Like I mentioned before, this is going to be the current email that's being created. Once we have that sys email log, since in this use case it's only on one table, so I want to make sure that it is the email that I want and that it's triggered by the notification activities, because I don't want to process this whole script on every single email, because again, we always want to make sure that it's optimized. So here, we're making sure that it is sent from the notification activity, and this is the name of the event. Next, we're going to query the outbound email table, the one that I just showed you, just so we can look and find that record. And here we can see that in our, just by going through the dot walking, we can see that we're looking at the email log, and then we are going into the event field, and then we're drilling down into the event field, which is a reference field, drilling down to get PARM2. And in PARM2, what that's going to do is it's actually going to store the sys ID of the record that fired the event. And in that record that fired the event, we can actually get that sys ID, and then that sys ID will be able to query our tables in order to actually go through and get our attachments. And here we're just going to do a quick check just to make sure that it exists. And then next we're going to query the sys attachment table just like we queried it in the mail script. But here we're going to use a little different method to get this information. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. Some of the other options that I ran into, I was using a while loop to loop through and get all of the different records on the sys attachment table, and then inject each one of those into the email. But with this, it's all through one line of code that I found. It's actually really, really neat because you give it one record on the sys attachment table, and it's going to copy all of the records, that actually have attachments that are related to and similar to this one. So here you can see that in the first section here, it's going to be going through the target table name. So in this instance, we're going to go through the sys attachment table. That's going to be the target table. the target sys-ID, so we're getting the sys-ID of that attachment record. Because again, like I mentioned, the attachments aren't being stored on our custom table that we made. It's not being stored on the outbound email table. It's being stored on the sys attachments table. Next, we're going to be what's the table that's going to be receiving these attachments? So it's going to be the current table that we're working in, which is the sys email table. Then what's the record? It's the current sys ID, which is going to be the current email address that's being, or the current email that's being processed. And again, if anybody's not familiar with emails in ServiceNow, is they go through a processing process where they start out as being processed, so they'll be in the outbox. And then once they're actually fully processed and sent, they get moved into the sent box. So we are wanting to put this attachment in before it gets into the sent box. And that's why we're doing it asynchronously. And also another really important reason why we're doing it asynchronously is because the email log actually isn't created if you do it on before. So on before, you're going to be looking for the sys email log, but it's before the email is processed, so that the sys email log doesn't exist. And if you do it on after, then the email's already sent. The email's already been processed and created and sent. So that's another thing to think about. All right, I think that is everything that I have for this. I'll go ahead and go back to the slides. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to think of those and put them down in the chat. And if anybody needs to contact me afterwards, if anybody wants the script or anything like that, any reference material that I might have ran into or any information that I might have ran into in researching the solution, feel free to reach out to me or email me at michael.rausch@pharicode.com or michael.rausch@glidefast.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Really, any form of media that you'd like to reach out, I would gladly respond.
All right, Michael, I'm gonna come back on. Hey, everyone. We did get a few questions, so we can start from the top if that works for you. So you can see the first one. It says here, we use the out-of-the-box include attachment option for notifications on incident, but don't like that the attachment has to be on the incident form where users and technicians can view and delete it. Could this be used for outbound emails from incident as well? So that's a great one, I think. And again, excellent presentation. So if anyone has more questions, keep sending them over. So the question again is, could this be used for outbound emails from incident as well, if you want to take that?
Right, yeah, so this could definitely be used in incident as well. So you would just really go through the same process, but instead of in the script calling out the lifecycle events activity notification event, maybe you'd want to create your own event so that you could call that whenever you need to in your incident. But of course, yeah, you can do that through there. If you want to do that to incident and in addition, do it through the HR lifecycle events. You could, again, leverage that PARM2 that I showed where you can store the table name of each process so that you can actually use both of those in your scripts. And then it looks like there is another question. If we're working in the global scope, is the table outbound email attachments needed? I wouldn't say that it's needed necessarily, but I think it's a really nice perk because you actually have a place to store your email attachments outside of the incident form. So I would think that's extremely important. I never really thought about that use case until this came to me, and I saw all the different ways that you might be able to use this throughout ServiceNow. But if you didn't want to, you wouldn't have to create that table. You could just go through. You wouldn't have to use, like, let's say, use incident again as an example. You wouldn't have to use incident, so you could trigger the notification from incident event or through an incident notification, and use that script to actually go through and call that the attachments that you want. Maybe they live on another table, maybe it's from a knowledge article that you think is important, and you can actually use that script to take attachments from another table and then inject that into your email.
Excellent. All right, enough. We have a third question that just came in as well. If anyone has any others, feel free to fire them over. So the question is, in your research to resolve this use case, was there any other interesting ways to manipulate the attachments in ServiceNow that you discovered? That's a good one.
Yeah, so that one, there was actually a really cool one. It was a video actually that I found. It was someone sending outbound email attachments through Flow Designer. So I thought that was really interesting. I really wanted to use it because I think Flow Designer has a lot of really cool features, but I couldn't find a real good place to fit that in with Lifecycle events and also be able to leverage that Flow Designer for that particular piece. But I really liked it a lot because there's a lot of cool things that you can do in Flow Designer, and I haven't seen anybody really leverage attachments or anything in Flow Designer yet.
All right, Michael, I think those are all the questions that we had come in for today. But of course, if anyone has any follow-up, you can reach out to Michael via email. We'll be sending this recording as well, so you can just respond to those emails with any questions or follow-up. We'll also be sharing this content publicly available, so you can refer to it and all the script and all the great information in your free time. So thank you again, everyone, for, yes, the recording will be uploaded. A question just came in. So we are going to share it on YouTube, so you'll be able to access it there, and then all of those who attended and registered will be getting an email. So you'll get that pretty quickly, actually. All right, and I think it's a good time for us to announce our winner for the gift card. Alrighty, so we're very excited to share that the winner of the $50 Visa gift card today is Kevin Hall. So thank you so much for attending today, participating. We hope you've received some valuable information, and we'll be sending you an email to receive your gift card. And if you didn't if you weren't the winner, no worries. We are giving away a grand prize for all of our webinar series. So Pharicode On Air is happening now through the end of June. So do check out our website to register for more webinars. And we are giving, so when as many as you attend, that will be an entry into our grand prize. And we're giving away one of these workout mirrors here. So it's a $1,500 value. We'll be selecting the winner at the end of June at the end of our series. Great. And thank you, everyone, for attending. And I don't know, Michael, if you had any final words of advice or just wanted to jump in before we close today's webinar.
Oh, no, I don't have anything. Just want to thank everybody for attending. I appreciate your time. And again, feel free to reach out if you have any questions about this or really anything else ServiceNow related that you can think of.
Excellent. Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending. Feel free to reach out to us on social media, on our website, and you can go and get access to more sessions at pharicode.com/on Pharicode-on air. We'll send that information all on social media and email, so it will be available to you. And thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it.